the controls.
Well, I thought I hit record and finally it just started happening.
All right.
This is a matter of documentation. I'd like to introduce Amy Cox, who's our guest tonight. And Amy has interest in us in our club. And she's a medical student at Oakland University at the William Beaumont Medical School, right?
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Now, is Amy Beaumont is Amy a cyclist?
I am, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, good. I just was curious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's also,
I would say that's not a bicycle.
My next medical mission in Guatemala.
Yeah. Well, so I wasn't sure whether her interest was in the mission or in motorcycles or both.
She's still learning about Rotary. She's got good interest so far. So.
Well, that's great. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks.
Is this when we tell her that we're not really all a bunch of old farts?
And good luck with
good luck. All she has to do is look at the pictures and she knows that's not true.
Yeah, I was going to say, really?
which one of us are you talking about, John?
If the shoe fits, Brian. Or is that, no, Chris is muted.
We have a couple of other young people interested in us as well, and that's good stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, Brian, you want to go ahead?
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yep. Brian and Jerry are eating their dinner, so I feel good.
Mouths are busy.
I wasn't sure if I was going to run the meeting or Jerry was going to run it. Well, everybody, let's see. I'm on my iPad. Let me see if I can make this a little bit different here real quickly.
Can you turn your volume up somehow?
Maybe.
Same.
There
you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to our regularly scheduled Wednesday meeting of Rotary Club of Motorcycling Rotarians. I'm not exactly sure. You know, I thought Jerry was going to introduce our guest, and I'm a little bit lost. So,
well, would you like me to introduce myself?
I would love for you to introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Although Jerry is qualified, I would hope I was more qualified.
Well, don't forget Rory.
Well, Rory would be qualified as well, but but I can do it myself if that's good with everybody. My name is Steve Seltzer. I've been a member of the Rotary Club of Altoona since 1978, and I am I joined your group. What was that, about 2 years ago when things were getting started. I started riding a motorcycle as a child, about 10, 11 years old. And for those of you who need a reference point, I've been riding for over 50 years, and we'll just let it go at that. I did the past 13 years of my life, however, I was a motorcycle dealer. While I rode in grade school, well, not grade school, but I rode as a junior high school, college, and my adult life. It became a career in 2005. And we sold that business in August of 2018. Yes, I still ride. Indeed, I ride more now than I did when I was in the motorcycle business. And there's a story there as well. I have my Rotary connection. I have my motorcycling connection. And so like Amy, I guess I'm here for maybe two different reasons. Tonight, I'm your speaker. This is not my first time as your speaker. This is the second time I've actually done it. It's the third time I've been invited. I missed my first presentation because I was leading a ride of customers. We did a program called Two Wheel Tuesday, and I didn't realize that I was scheduled to be a speaker the first Tuesday in May. The ride started in May, and I was getting text messages on my cell phone while I was leading the ride. Where are you? And that's when I realized that I had missed my first calling. But I'm glad to be here tonight. And the subject that I was asked to talk about was oil. and lubrications specifically. And I want to make sure that you all understand I don't hold myself out to be an expert. While I've been doing it for a long, long time, while I've been doing it professionally for 13 years, there's probably people in this group that know more than I do. I was getting some emails yesterday. Could we talk about Seafoam? Could we talk about Marvel oil additives? And you know, my expertise isn't there. If I was to share with you one thing, one takeaway from tonight, it would be this: oil is cheap, engines are expensive. And I learned that as a child on a two-stroke dirt bike, and I continued to learn that as the owner of a business. We would get customers who would bring products in for service that had been seriously neglected. And I got to see some of those engines and what happens when you don't maintain the products the way you should. We had a brief conversation before this meeting started about, you know, I'm Honda, and you're going to see a presentation from Honda this evening, but while I was a Honda dealer before, I was a Kawasaki dealer or a Husqvarna dealer or a Kymco dealer. I think I don't think there's anything in tonight's presentation that would that Kawasaki people or Harley Davidson people or Indian people will find offensive or disagree with. But I reached out to a good friend of mine who I actually had lunch with him yesterday. He was my district service manager, Todd Cruz. He and I had lunch yesterday because I said he was actually supposed to do this presentation, and he begged off on me. But I said, Todd, you got to talk to me about oil. And it seems like we covered every subject but oil. But let me run you through the slides, and then whether it's Brian or Jerry or me, we can kind of maybe open the discussion up at the end. I'm just gonna touch on the highlights. I'm gonna hit the share screen here. All right, do my desktop share screen. Okay, we're gonna move this over there, and I'm gonna try to just kind of run through these slides. Don't hesitate to stop me, yell, scream. This was actually a presentation that was put together for Honda dealers about 5 years ago, as you can see, summer of 2014. And this was from a dealer meeting that we had. I think it was out in California, but I don't even remember exactly where the dealer meeting was. But this was one of the sessions we sat through. And I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I'm just going to kind of run through stuff quickly. A lot of people have never stopped to think about motorcycles being different than the cars and trucks we drive. This would be probably the second takeaway. Engines, oil is cheap, engines are expensive would be number one. Number two, your motorcycle is a completely different animal from an automobile. And we'll touch on that as I go through this. The industry standard for motorcycle oils is JASO, J-A-S-O, Japanese, it's down in here. And that's kind of the industry standard for motorcycles. We're going to talk a little bit about Pro Honda oils, but again, we sold Kawasaki oils in our store. We sold AMSOIL in our store. We had some customers that bought Bel-Ray. We had a couple different, we had a couple different groups. But my comment always was, I don't care what oil you buy, as long as you buy oil, and as long as you change your oil, because that's really kind of what is important. They talk about oils being formulated, and we have Honda had basically three kinds of oil. They had what we call GN4, which was our mineral oil. It was mineral based. We had a semi-synthetic, and we had a synthetic. And people would often ask me, they'd stick their head in my office and they'd say, what oil should I buy? And everybody has a personal preference. And I'm going to go back to I became a dealer in 2005, but 2 years before that, so I wasn't a dealer. I bought a used Honda Valkyrie. And when I went to pick the motorcycle up, I asked the guy, what oil should I use? And he looked at me and he said, you only use Honda Mobile One. I changed from Honda oil to Mobile One, and you want to use Mobile One. Mobile One is a synthetic oil, and I can tell you, I wasn't crazy about how that motorcycle ran on Mobile One. It was the oil was almost too slippery for the clutch, and I really disliked how the clutch performed on that motorcycle. And I was driving that motorcycle, including when I bought the store and became a dealer, and I talked to our service department, and I talked to the Honda district service manager, and they convinced me to move from Mobile One to a semi-synthetic, and things worked much better. Personally, my belief is it's more important that you change your oil than which oil you change to, but we'll get into some of the advantages of some semi-synthetics and synthetics a little later on. So if you look at this chart, they talk about automobiles and motorcycles, and I told you, there's a big difference between your car and your motorcycle. Oil in your car lubricates the engine. Oil in your motorcycle lubricates your engine and your transmission, and therein lies the big difference. Cars you're going to see normally, unless you're driving a Honda S2000 or something and of that ilk, you're going to be running in the 4,000 to 8,000 RPM range. Motorcycles, more likely you're going to see a 6,000 to 15,000 RPM range. Big difference, almost double the top line. Horsepower anywhere from 40 to 106. Motorcycles, I mean, yeah, we had motorcycles that had less than 60 horsepower, but you get into some of these sport bikes, they're pushing 200 horsepower, and your oil temperatures are going to vary between automobiles and motorcycles, because the oil in a motorcycle is lubricating the transmission, which is building up a lot of heat. Long and the short of it is, the oil in a motorcycle, really, you get severe conditions in a motorcycle, whereas in a car, we'll call it less severe. So that's kind of the takeaway from this slide. And again, this same thing, engine oil is lubricating the engine, but the car has transmission fluid and transmission oil separate from the engine oil. In motorcycles, however, like I said, we're doing engine, we're doing clutches, we're doing the transmission, and so motorcycle oil has to work really, really hard compared to the oil we run in our car engines. Back when I was a kid, and motorcycle oil was, I'm not even sure. I'm sure they made it, but barely made it. And to be honest with you, I think as kids, we probably went down to the local convenience store or the Gulf station and bought a quart of oil. And we never thought about putting car oil into our motorcycles. But the performance of motorcycles in the 1960s was way different than it is today. So, you have motorcycle coming off to the left on your screen, automobiles off to the right. And we talk about viscosity, and the relation to viscosity, how thick or thin the oil is to gear wear, clutch slippage, things like that. That's all stuff that you have in motorcycles that you don't get in your car. And that's why that JSO standard was set back in 1998, and it had to do as much with problems with clutches and friction as it did anything else. And JSO set the standards for all of your Japanese motorcycles, not just Honda. If you look at on the left side of this screen, the JSO approval code that has an MA, that's the code you want to look for. That's how you know it meets the JSO standard for oil, and that's the Japanese Automotive Standards Organization. There's your full name. Your MA is your is your oil that was formulated to protect an engine and transmission in a motorcycle. MB is a low friction oil, but that would be used in a motorcycle. Some motorcycles, and I'll give you an example, a Honda CRF 250 or a 450, the race bikes, they have separate transmission oil as opposed to engine oil. So an MB oil would be used in a motorcycle like that. There's some other examples of MB, Honda Aquatrax, their jet ski. Again, there's no transmission, so an MB oil is what you would use in vehicles of that nature. Honda is very proud of its oil family. They exceed the JSO performance requirements, but I'll be honest with you, so do the Kawasaki oils, so does AMSOIL. You want to make sure that the oil you buy has an MA or an MB rating, depending on what kind of a motorcycle you're riding. Most likely, this group is using MA. And I get questioned. I used to get questioned all the time. What about AMSOIL? What about all the other stuff that's out there? And again, I'm going to fall back to the important thing is change your oil as opposed to what you change it to, as long as you're not putting, a car oil in it. So we sold a lot of both, but we sold mostly. People stayed within their brand. So Kawasaki owners tended to buy the Kawasaki oil. Honda owners tended to buy the Honda oil, and the Rebels tended to buy AMSOIL and a couple of the other products. The durability and the reliability of your motorcycle is dependent on you taking good care of. This is probably about the most important thing you can do, other than maybe keeping water out of your fuel system, keeping your fuel stabilized, or dealing with ethanol, etc. But the quality and performance of the oil, it'll have a positive effect on your experience. Honda got into, this was years and years ago before I was a dealer, they got into an arrangement with Idemitsu Lubricants. And Idemitsu is a Japanese company. They do all the formulations for Honda. When Honda develops a new product, and I'll give you an example, the Talon that just was announced, their sport side-by-side. Idemitsu was working over a year ago on the oil for that product. They will formulate the product, they'll test it, then Honda gets it and they test it, Honda approves it, and then it'll get put into production. Yes, Kawasaki has its standards and its arm of development, et cetera, but that's kind of how the Honda oils got created and for the different products that we sold. In Idemitsu, if I'm saying it right, I mean, they have gas stations, they transport, they have refineries, they do crude oil transportation. This is, if you will, an oil company. Honda is not an oil company. But they did, Mr. Honda worked with the Mr. Idemitsu way back in the dark ages, and they got together on their oil. So there's your history lesson for today. When you create a motorcycle oil, you're looking at a bunch of different things. You want to, of course, you want to have a good quality oil. You need to make sure that it can clean the engine. It's got to have antioxidants in it. You want to keep rust out of an engine, corrosion. You want to have anti-wear compounds so that the engine wears minimally over time. Your viscosity and your friction modifiers. If it's cold, if it's hot out, your oil still has to perform. It still has to protect your engine. So if it's 90, 100 degrees outside, the oil needs to thin itself, or to thicken itself up to protect the engine. If it's cold, like it is where I am right now, the oil has to be thinner so the engine will turn over. So those are some of the things that they think about when they're developing oils for motorcycles. and also cars, but oils. What Honda's trying to tell us here is, their proprietary formulations, it meets Honda's exact needs and requirements versus maybe other oils from other manufacturers. But again, I'm going to fall back to, as long as you change your oil with a good quality oil, that's still better than not doing it. However, these are some test results that Honda throws out there, and we're not slamming AMSOIL or Yamalube or Maxima. I'm simply sharing with you what Honda found when they ran some tests. GN4 happens to be my oil of choice, and we'll get into that later in the conversation. I happen to be a fan of GN4. It's a mineral oil-based product. It is not a semi-synthetic. It is not a synthetic. If I drove more than 8,000 miles a year on my motorcycle, I would feel differently. But I'm a 3,000 mile a year guy, maybe a 4,000 mile a year guy, and there's no reason for me to take advantage of the benefits of, in my opinion, of semi-synthetic or synthetic oils. So you can see that in this volatility test, Honda's oil did pretty well. In the resistance to acid formation, a pretty big jump there. And acid is one reason you change your oil, is the acids that build up inside an engine. One of the things I used to hear in my store was, well, I only drove 2,000 miles last year, so I'm not going to change my oil. That's a bad plan. And the reason is acids and bad things, condensation inside your engine, that occurs whether you drive the bike or don't drive the bike. And it's actually harder on a bike to not drive it than it is to drive it, as long as you do some regular maintenance. And that's something that kind of defies logic. Here's some pictures of, Honda's oil on cylinders versus aftermarket oils. And again, I'm not here selling you Honda oil. I'm simply trying to show you the difference between a good oil and a bad oil. Same thing, oxidation comparisons. You can see if you look at the bottom picture, a case opened up with a bike that used an aftermarket oil versus a bike that used Pro Honda oil. This is a hard one to see, but this is a gear, and you can see pitting to the right, and you see no pitting on the gears on the left, and that's the type of thing that can happen, and you just don't realize that it's happening until you have a transmission problem. Hold on here, let me get rid of it.
You can have that problem by overusing that oil too.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the oil is.
Yep. So, okay. All right. Horsepower comparison, and this is pretty obscure, but for the, if you were a cam head and you wanted maximum horsepower, Honda is suggesting to you that their 4 synthetic, you're going to get a little bit better of a horsepower rear wheel, power to your rear wheel. You're going to get the best power if you use a synthetic oil. Their GN4 was a little bit less, and they actually take you down through Yamalube, GN4, AMSOIL, Maxima, Yamalube, Bel-Ray. Will you notice a difference between 145 horsepower and 156 horsepower? You might, you might. And that's probably, if you look at the blue curve, that's probably the high and the low. But, will you see a difference between 156 and 158? Probably. I wouldn't notice it, but I guess there's people that would. Moving along, in 2007, Honda went from 10W40 in its bikes. 2006 was the last year. 2007, we went to a 10W30 oil. They claimed it would give us more horsepower, more torque. We we made that switch in 2007. I'd been a dealer for a year or two, so it was almost transparent to me. But of course, we were still selling a lot of the 10W40 oil because not everybody goes out and buys new products. But they both protect adequately. And again, we talked about you want to have the oil classification of MA. By the way, if anybody wants, if you want to look and you want to read all these slides, if you send me an email after, I'll send you the PowerPoint presentation, and you too could have all this information at your fingertips. We talked about 2006 versus 2007 and the different families of Honda oils. The GN4 that I like, the HP4, which is a semi-synthetic. HP4M is your oil for bikes that have separate transmission oil, your CRF 250, your Aquatrax, your CRF 250, and then your HP4S, which is your full synthetic. And again, if you're a high mileage rider, if you're riding a bunch of miles, it makes sense for you to use that oil because you'll get way more mileage out of a synthetic oil than you will out of a regular oil. All right. Nothing real exciting there. Hold on here. My computer's catching up with. There we go. And you're going to laugh, but most of the oil we bought was in drums. See that drum on the right? That's how a motorcycle dealer buys its oil. Right. And we would buy, typically, we would buy 4 to 6 drums a year. But retail, of course, we were selling the bottles and the cans. Some customers prefer the gallons. That little red container is gear oil. In case you're wondering what the heck that is, that's gear oil. But that's kind of the Honda family of oils there. Good, better, and best. And, like I said, I was very satisfied with Good because I change my oil every year when I get my bike inspected. I bring it in, I get it inspected, I get them to change the oil. I run 4,000 to 5,000 miles a year on a good year, 3 to 4 otherwise. And that oil will do a great job for me. And there's your fully synthetic, it's great for racing. It's, anything newer than a 2007. Again, my personal experience, I wouldn't do that on a bet because of my experience with my Valkyrie. But the rule of thumb is if you switch to a synthetic, don't go back to a mineral-based oil. So I moved to the semi-synthetic, and my clutch got better. So that was my personal experience. That's just, again, talking about your specialty oils. The difference between that oil, that HP4M, it has moly in it, which is almost like a graphite. And that's not something you want to be putting in a regular motorcycle where you're lubricating your transmission and your engine. So that would only be for use in a bike that had separate transmission oil. So just don't make the mistake of buying a semi-synthetic that has moly in it, which would have an M on the end. All right. This is all your Honda stuff, and we, Honda oil works in all motorcycle brands, as does Kawasaki oil, as does Ames oil, etc. It's the important thing again is not that you buy good oil, but that you change it. So that was my Honda presentation. Again, I'm not a research, I'm not a chemist. All I can tell you is you'll be well served if you remember that oil is cheap and engines are expensive. Do your own oil changes, yes. Have a professional do them, yes. The important thing is that they get done. All right, Brian, is that what you wanted? Jerry, somebody, anybody?
That's perfect.
Okay. Good information. Thank you.
I have one question, Steve. By the way, I've been to Steve's dealership. It was a neat place, made even neater by his puppy dog that greeted everybody. What mileage do you recommend changing?
I think it depends on your conditions and your driving habits. My answer would be different if you told me you were driving an Africa Twin and you were doing off-road versus Goldwing. Look, most people, if you know, ask Rory what his book says. The initial oil change. I mean, Honda will tell you on a brand new Goldwing you can go. I think is it 3,000, Rory? Or was it? I think it was. They'll say 3,000. We always thought that was a little long for the initial change. I was telling customers 1,500, and then after that, you know, 3,000.
But times already. Yeah. I think the book said 4,000.
4,000. Yeah, I'm a little conservative. So if you were to ask me, I'd say 3. But you know, if you're doing interstate driving, no dirt. You know, you're not running into, 75, you're running 75 ambient temperature, not running real hot in Florida in the summer heat. You know, I think all those things will impact when you do it.
We changed it. So far, I think, Steve, at 12,000 miles now, I've changed it 4 times.
4 times. Yeah, that'd be about right.
Well, I changed it to 600 before we went to Alaska, and then I want to say it was close to 5,000 for the next one, less than that for the second one after that. And then when I took it in for service back in September, they changed it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's as opposed to while mileage is important, time is equally as important. And I think we had a lot of customers as well. You know, I only put 1,000 miles on it since you changed the oil. Yeah, but it's been 2 years, and you need to factor in time every bit as much as you need to factor in mileage, and you need to factor in conditions, heat, dirt, how you ride,
gravel.
Yep.
That last one, the one I traded in, I used to do about 8,000 miles on oil, but I do 1 or 2 filters in the middle of that and top it off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's my thoughts. Other questions?
I have a question about the oil changes. As far as time, I don't usually ride in the winter. Should I try and time an oil change at the beginning of winter, at the end of winter, after the bike is sat for a while, or does it not matter?
The important thing is that you do it. There are two camps on this one. Some people do it before they put the bike away, and there's a couple of reasons that they do it before they put the bike away. But truth be told, probably the biggest one is they want the bike ready for when the weather gets good, so they can go out and ride. And the busiest time in a motorcycle shop service department is in the spring. April, May, June are our 3 busiest months. And, nobody wants to call a dealer and have to wait more than about 2 minutes for an oil change. So a lot of people do it in the fall. My preference is to do it in the spring. And one of the reasons I like to do it in the spring is that's when my state inspection needs to be done. And so I can make one trip to my dealership to get that done. And any acids or condensation that might have accumulated over the winter is going to get cleaned out of that engine, and I'm going to have fresh oil for the summer. That's when I do it. But again, the important thing is do it.
I'm going to say the other camp on that is get all that dirty oil and acids out in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How oil filters themselves? Is there such a thing as a name brand versus off-brand quality?
I think as long as you look at the product and it is certified, that MA certification, that oil meets the standards set forth by JSO. So, if you look at Yamaha's can, if you look at Harley's can, As long as it met the standards, you're going to be fine.
Are you talking about the oil or the filter there, Tom?
Oh, I thought he was talking about oil.
Yeah, I was talking about filters. Any big difference in quality of filters?
I will tell you I've got, again, some experience as a dealer. We had a customer, obviously we recommend either a Honda filter or a Kawasaki filter, depending on the bike we're working with. But we had a customer that got an off-brand filter, and he put it on backwards, and he ruined his engine. The Honda filter goes on one way. The aftermarket filter would go on either way, and it makes a difference. So,
ouch.
Yeah. So that's an actual story from the store. Whatever he saved on that filter wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Wasn't worth it.
Going to say, all I've ever seen is about a $2 difference between a Honda filter and an off-market. So I'll spend the $2.
Yep. And if you do buy an off-brand, just be careful that you know whether it has to go on one way or the other way, because some products it's important. I think that may have been it might have been a Husqvarna. I can't remember what the bike was that locked up his engine, but that's what happened.
If I may, Steve, I have another question, and this is involving the lubrication of cables. I've had readings that say WD-40, repeated use, it actually, as it dries, it gets sticky and is worse for the cables than some of the other lubricants for cables.
We've seen that in real life, and it kind of it gets a little sticky and it attracts dust and dirt, and so we've seen it. And again, Honda has a full line of you name it, they have it, and so we always use their product for cable lubrication. I've heard that. I have seen. I used to use WD-40 in my wood shop to lubricate my saws and different things. And WD-40 has its place. I'll take you to my garage and show you my can. I still have it, but I think there's products that are better than that. I think WD-40 is better than a dry cable, but I would use the right product.
It makes a good cutting oil when you're grilling too.
Yeah. Yep. You ever hear of Kroil, Kroil? Kroil is a great product.
T109 was good.
I've seen people use silicone. I've seen them use all kinds of different things. Everybody has their favorite one, but I always went with the cable lubricant from Honda. And that's just what we use, and it served us well. So if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
So if you happen to ride a motorcycle that is not from Japan and not from America, what about the API classifications for like Ducati and that sort of thing? I mean, they're not going to. I mean, Ducati's not going to recommend a Jasso oil. They're going to recommend some other thing.
One of the things, because I mean, we had the Husqvarnas and different things. My best advice would be, you want to go to your book, and there was a picture on the slide of the owner's manual open to the page for oil. If Ducati recommends a specific product, you'd be crazy not to use it, or Harley Davidson or whatever. The manufacturer is recommending, based on their testing and their experience, the right product to use. For the life of me, I can't understand why we as enthusiasts try to do the manufacturer one better. Are we trying to? I just don't understand why.
Doesn't Ducati use like an olive oil blend?
No, they use SM grade API, which was just introduced in 2010. It's fairly new.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a Triumph besides my Honda, so I should look at the same things.
Yeah, it's at least look at the book. We would, and Rory will tell you, I did this. I took my business card and I went to the maintenance schedule and I put my business card right in the owner's manual at that page. At least I better have. And one of the things that as a dealer we would try to make sure our salespeople did is take the owner's manual, show it to the customer, show them where the maintenance schedule is, and kind of go over the importance of doing this stuff. The problem is they're excited, they want to go ride their product, and they didn't hear a darn thing you said.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, I think you can run that 3-in-1 sewing machine oil mixed with Marvel Mystery Oil.
Try that. Yeah.
That olive oil makes a great salad dressing.
Yeah. Does it taste better after you run it through a Ducati though?
Does it smoke when you run it in the Ducati? That's maybe a better question.
I'm reading through One Man Caravan, Robert Fulton's account of in the 1930s or 1920s driving a motorcycle around the world. And that was, I can't remember the name of the bike, but you can get the book nowadays off Google Play. He dumped the bike in the dirt someplace crossing the desert, and it was in this little village, and the only oil they had was some mustard oil. And then he realized once he started it up again, it was producing mustard gas. So he just had his own exhaust cloud. It's a great story.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, the only other item I have to talk about or have you mention is the rear end loop.
So in the picture we showed you that red container with the black top, the gear oil. Now, of course, on a shaft drive machine, you're gonna check to make sure that the fluid is at the right level. And again, I'd take you right back to your owner's manual. I think it's is it 16,000 and 32,000 if I remember correctly. But you want to make sure that gets checked, make sure that gets changed at the appropriate intervals. Whether it's a shaft drive machine or a belt drive machine, follow the manufacturer's recommendations. They are giving you the best advice possible. Regrettably for us as a dealer, if the customers would follow that advice, we would sell less machines. So maybe we shouldn't have been so good about trying to point out to them the right way to maintain the machine. If you follow their recommendations, unfortunately for me or for the dealers, that's going to be the last motorcycle you need. Now, hopefully you'll want one, but you won't need it. You'll just want it. But yeah, everything on the maintenance, your antifreeze, which is another thing. At least on Hondas, you want to use their antifreeze as opposed to car antifreeze. Some car antifreeze products have silica in them, which will tear up the water pump. And so you got to be very careful that you use the recommended products. I'm not telling you that because I want your local Honda dealer to make more money. I'm telling you that because I want to save you money, which it will do in the long run.
I had a water pump go out. I think you pointed it out on that Pennsylvania trip that I had a water leak.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I went home and had to change it. $250 for the pump and about 2 days worth of tearing apart and putting back together.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, keep an eye on those stuff, on that stuff.
So about genuine oil, if you're buying a Harley, you probably don't want it to look like this on the logo. I got this in Bangkok, so you want the genuine article, not the knockoff.
Mm-hmm. There you go. One of the things, if there's anybody that wants the slide presentation, my email address is my name, Steve Seltzer, all run together, no spaces, Steve Seltzer at Atlantic, like the ocean, Atlantic, BB, as in broadband.net. Now, I also have, if you send me an email and you want it, Todd Cruz, the fellow who snagged me this presentation, also got some Honda propaganda thumb drives, flashlights. He wasn't even sure what was in the box. He was supposed to bring the box to lunch yesterday and forgot it. But if you would like the Honda propaganda, I would be glad to send that along. Send me an email with your address, and I'll put it in a padded envelope and incur great personal expense and send it off to you.
Steve, is there a period in between your first and last name, or is it just Steve Seltzer?
No, it's all run together, SteveSeltzer, Steve Seltzer at Atlantic, like the ocean Atlantic, BB as in broadband.net.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Steve. So at this point, we're going to talk about a couple things. It looks like Glenda has, she chatted me up about there's a conflict on a ride coming up. You want to tell us about that, Glenda?
Unmute.
Self.
Unmute, please.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a conversation with Bruce and I. We were talking about Bruce is planning a ride up this way.
Okay.
And there's another ride that's going on up here the same weekend that we're all supposed to be in Ohio. So it's just for people in the Bruce Peninsula that there's a ride up here the same weekend as the Ohio ride.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot, Glenda. I thought maybe that was an official thing.
No, that was a mistake of mine. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so next week, Glenda's going to be our speaker, and she's going to talk about her illustrious self, our wonderful secretary. And does anybody else have any other announcements?
Yes. Tom here. Linda had asked me to ask you to put the following on the agenda for the board meeting next week. We have some business to do about chartering, and we need to get our charter members some charter certificates and some packets of information and things that charter members would like. There are also some, Rotary suggestions for mementos and souvenirs and paraphernalia. And I've made a list of all of these things, and we can more fully discuss the contents of said packet and materials at the board meeting next week. But to just kind of give you an alert, if we went full bore with, a couple of charter coffee mugs and a hat and the charter membership packet, and so forth, it would run about $65 per member. We could take off X number of dollars depending on whether we did or did not want 72 coffee mugs, but we always seem to be short on something to give somebody, and if each one of the charter members had 2, that would give us another 32 to hand out as gifts or whatever, or maybe some of the charter members need 4 or 6 coffee cups. The charter packet itself contains about 7 or 8 items, and that's the presentation folder, the 4-way test card, the object of the Rotary card. It also has a gold-plated charter member lapel pin. It's got the 4-way test. It's got a reflectorized auto decal, your certificate of charter membership, and a new member ribbon name badge. Speaking of name badges, that was one of the things that was included in that number that I gave you. It would be about a 1.5 inch by 3 inch plastic engraved name badge that would be magnetically mounted on your shirt or jacket. And that means you could take it with you, given that, we don't have a permanent location. Therefore, we don't have a box with all the circular badges and paraphernalia that an ordinary Rotary Club would have. But I think a name badge would go well with us wherever we went. So next week, I'll have more details. And again, just wanted to kind of give you all advance notice. If any of you have suggestions on things you would like to see included or excluded, please let me know. And you can also go to rotaryinternational.org and look up charter memberships, events, locations, celebrations, speeches, and whatnot. But we've been inducted. So I think the primary thing to do is to go ahead and get these charter mementos out to all of us. And then it was brought to my attention by our illustrious Jerry that we also might give a bit of consideration to associate members, because they too do pay dues. So, you know, perhaps we would want to give them a certificate of associate membership in the Motorcycling Rotarians Club. Food for thought. And at this point, I back off, back to the background.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
I'd like to thank Glenda for the minutes of our last meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Although they didn't come through the first time.
Well, everybody took me off when I found out nobody read the last one, so I sent a blank email to see if you noticed.
We did.
Oh, I do have one more question regarding all this charter membership business that will affect the Rotary Motorcycling Rotarians as well. But I think at one time it was brought out that, was it Denise that had done a drawing that might be used as the Rotary logo, not unlike our Rotary cyclist, you know, emblem that we have on our jackets, but our own Rotary Club of Motorcycling Rotarians logo, that we might have a patch made or use it in our public relations materials. If anyone remembers that drawing, please let me know.
We keep circling this question, and I don't think we've really come up with an answer quite yet. So I think that could be another item for the agenda, or we can bring it up at the next meeting.
Well, I know if you look through those, oh, it must be 30 or 40 images that Denise had online under documents. There was one that was for the Club of Motorcycling Rotarians that said something to the effect of inspire, together we inspire, and it had a picture of a motorcycle and a person on it and a real nice background, not necessarily the logo, but I'm going to be taking that along with our flyer into a dealership where I have permission to post these and see if we can get some more new members from a dealership.
Tom, do you have that link that you can send out to either all of us or me so we can take a look at it? Because I don't think I ever saw that.
I think, Tom, to correct a couple things. Number one, it's not Denise. You're talking Debbie Vance, aren't you?
I am. Debbie Vance. You're correct.
Okay. And I think a lot of us seen some of the work Debbie's done in terms of graphics, including the motorcycle image that she did.
In fact, while everybody's talking, if you like,
it's on our webpage somewhere.
While everybody's talking, if you like, I'll put that up on the screen. But I don't know how to share it, but I could probably.
No, if you could just send it in an email, that would be great. I would really appreciate that.
Okay, yeah. I can do that easily.
Okay, so
I've got a couple more things.
Yeah, go for it.
First off, I'm going to be gone for the next couple of weeks. I'm heading off to Africa on another Rotary Eye mission. And with it, I'm taking the Foraptor, which I don't know if you realized it or not, if you can see that. But I've got a dedicated label on it for our club.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
We've actually got 6 or 7 eye doctors on this mission, and the head doctor says he's going to be using me as a doctor too. So evidently, I'm starting to build up some capabilities. Jim Dolbeat, I understand, has been spending a lot of time with Linda setting up our meeting schedules for speakers and such. And I understand they got us all the way to the first of the Rotary year, 1st of July now. There is a couple of spots in there blank, and I saw one coming up. Maybe it's in March, was it, Jim? I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm Facebook friends with one of our members, Sarah. Oh, I don't know how to say her last name, but she's the BMW gal out in Oregon. She lives there. She's one of the lead people out there for BMW motorbikes. And she just finished a 2-week ride in Colombia on a 1200 off-road BMW motorcycle. And I'm talking about the country Colombia. And so I think that would be an awful interesting talk if she would be willing to do that.
March is filled.
Well, there was one up. I saw you had a blank somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think we're out in October now.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, the last thing I saw from Linda said that there was an opening coming up. So she'd be a great speaker, fresh from coming back from that.
Yeah, I'll send you a mail about it.
And then,
go ahead, Jerry.
And then I wanted to thank Amy for joining us tonight. And as I promised, when I get back from Africa, I'll take you to a couple of other Rotary clubs that meet live. And you'll see that Rotary is very different all over the place. And while I'm gone, you're more than welcome to join back in with these guys on Wednesday nights.
For sure.
Please join us anytime. Amy, welcome. It's nice to see another medical student here in a, even though I'm an old guy, I know
it's nice to see M4s exist.
Yeah.
That's in a very distant future for me.
Well, it seems like it, but, I think in my first year, I probably had an existential crisis at least 3 times a week. And so if you just need to, unwind or talk, you're absolutely welcome to shoot me an email. I'll chat you my school email, and anytime you want to talk, please let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Speaking of programs, I want to put in a special plug. I think it's the second week in February. Got a local Rotarian who has a presentation on his father's experiences in World War II, and it's called From Normandy to Nuremberg. And it's very fascinating what this guy was involved in. I think he was a military policeman. So I encourage you all to come to that one and bring friends.
Okay, is there anything else?
One last quick to Jerry. He had mentioned earlier today there might be a few extra dollars floating around for some of these charter items. And maybe he could give that number to you and or Linda, and Rory probably has it as well, but I just thought I'd inject that in before I disappear.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to do the 4-way test so we can get the heck out of here. It's 8 o'clock. And I just wanted to say that Linda sent out an email saying that we have a new member proposal coming up. So she'd like to schedule a board meeting. So watch for the email because we're going to need a quorum, and Jerry's going to be out of town. So let's see if we can't get that together. And
she already sent it out.
What's that? What was that?
You already sent it out.
Yeah, but we've got to vote on it in the meeting. So
right.
Yeah. Okay. 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Better friendships. Would be fair to all concerned. Beneficial to all concerned. Sorry about that. I'm awake.
And will it be fun? Have a good week, everyone.
All right.
Good seeing everybody.
I'll see you all in 2 weeks. I'll build up my tan a little bit more.
Enjoy Africa.
Oh, yeah. What's up with that tan?
Thank you all. Ride safe.
Good trip, Jerry.
Bye now.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Have a good week.
So, Amy, tell me about your school while we got a minute. Where are you at?
I'm at, it's a mouthful, Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine. So it's in Southeast Michigan.
Okay.
And I'm a first year.
He's only about 20 miles away from me.
Yeah,
okay.
Close to Jerry. So yeah, this is the way our school's set up is we do kind of like a general biomedical course in anatomy in the fall, and then now we've started organ systems. So we are starting with heme, lymph, and onc. So yeah, it's kind of been a hot mess right now trying to refigure out how to study, and there's probably a million resources out there. So
yeah,
trying to figure out my strategy right now.
So are you getting a lot of PowerPoints from your instructors, and you're just like getting inundated with lots of material?
They're pretty mediocre. You know, we've been told to use a lot of outside boards resources, but there are quite a few. So I'm trying to decide which ones I actually want to use.
So we had to take full shelves for anatomy, and we had to take full shelves for pathology. And so, but we didn't teach systems based. We learned, so we had a whole semester, 2 semesters of biochem, and then we had, 2 semesters of regular cell bio and things like that. But anatomy, I found BRS to be a really great resource for anatomy.